Moshi Moshi.
Hello,
I'm Zeb Ramsbotham,
and I'm Annie Ramsbotham.
and we're the Rambling Ramsbothams.
Our journey might be rambling, but we hope this podcast isn't.
And today we have tragic news to share.
Do we?
Yeah,
Well, let's hear it.
I left my Yaki dog in the
Oh.
car.
Yeah. I guess
Ugh.
tragedy is relative, but Zeb's tragedy of the day is that. So they sell these snacks in convenience stores that they look nasty, but Zeb really likes them.
So it's one of the things that I used to make fun of, and I never really bought one.
Well,
And
nobody
then,
even knows what we're talking about, but it's yakisoba in a hot dog bun.
Yeah, but it's more of like a buttery roll. It's not like, if you think hot dog bun, so it's hot dog bun shaped, but it's a little more buttery.
Just
Like
the idea of putting like noodles in bread is kind of odd, though.
Yeah, it's basically like mega carbs. But there was one day I was really hungry before I went to my night class, and I happened to be in the Lawson there, and so I bought one, just kind of like, because I was hungry, and I didn't know what kind of snack I wanted, and it was pretty cheap. They're not expensive, and I didn't want sweets, because I didn't want to buy
Just
a
wanted
sweet roll or
a
something.
whole lot of carbs.
Yeah, I'd done a really big ride that day, and I bought one kind of just like on a whim, just for fun. And then it was actually like really good.
It wasn't like dry. I'm thinking it's like the
No,
driest
that's what I'm saying.
thing.
It's like a buttery roll. Like the
Interesting.
roll is like soft and buttery, and then the yakisoba itself, has the sauce on it,
Yeah.
and then it has like a little bit of mayonnaise on the top.
I
And
mean, I love bread and I love pasta, so like maybe I would like it, but
yeah, you should try one.
so far I haven't had it. But when I got in the car, so I have 5 days left to drive on my international driver's license until it expires.
Yeah.
And that's something we'll talk about in a second. But I was driving to the bank to pay your residence tax, actually,
Yeah.
because the bank is like only open until 3
It's
on
open
work
from
days.
it's open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Yeah, so like
So-
a working person can't go.
Yeah, like basically if I wanted to go to the bank, I have to take time off.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things that are kind of inconvenient like that. That's why it is really nice to be here like with a spouse who has like a more flexible schedule.
Yeah.
Because Annie can take my Zyru card and stuff like that and go to the bank or
And
go
I
to
think
the
a lot
town
of people
hall.
do that because when I went, I don't have a Hunko stamp, and so I took your Hunko stamp and was doing
Mhm.
everything like as you, and I brought all of your
Yeah, you're like my
stuff.
representative.
Like
or
I brought
whatever.
your number card and your resident card and your Hunko stamp, and they didn't really. I mean, they like asked for a residency card, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, great." Like they weren't surprised at all. So like I guess a lot of
Yeah.
wives do that, but I was like, "Oh, can I pay my husband's residency tax?" And they're like, "Yeah, no problem." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, it's super useful. It's just like, yeah, it's very strange
Yeah.
that the bank hours are like that.
It is.
So I don't if you come over here, hopefully your workplace is lenient and gives you kind of time
Yeah.
to do stuff. Like first, when you come here on the JET program, your workplace should be pretty good. Like my supervisor drove me around a lot.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of like setting stuff up during work hours. But then after that, it was kind of like, all right, like it's up to you. But
Yeah,
anyway,
it was pretty painless.
Annie got in the car and she found my Yaki dog.
Oh yeah,
I'd left
that's why I was bringing
in the
that
car.
up. So your Yaki dog has spent like a couple days in a hot car.
Yeah, probably shouldn't be eaten
Oh, I
anymore.
already threw it. I threw it away
Okay.
immediately.
All right.
There was nothing like to question that.
Yeah.
But
I was just so bummed because I'd been saving it because we were on a road trip and I got it and I was like gonna save it because I always get hungry later after I eat. So that was gonna be my later snack.
doesn't everyone? I eat and then later I get hungry.
Well, I just
Life.
eat a bunch and then a couple hours later I'm like, oh man, I could
Yeah.
use a little snack. So that was gonna be my little snack and then I forgot about it and then left it in the car.
Yeah.
It's a huge bummer.
Well, one of the like mundane life experiences we were going to talk about today, besides paying taxes, was with that driver's license thing I mentioned. So Zeb's has already expired, so he is no longer allowed to drive a car.
Yeah, yesterday was my last day
He's
to be
probably
able to drive.
thrilled that I could
And
drive.
it's expired because I've been in Japan for over a year now.
Yeah, look at him
And
go.
so that's why it's expired. Because I entered the country on the 31st. And if you don't know this, your international driver permit, you can set a date for it to start in America, like any day. And then they will tell you, okay, so you can't drive until this date. The thing that you don't get explained to you or you just can't know, I guess, until you're in Japan, is in Japan, your international driver's permit's only good for 1 year. It's only valid for 1 year, and it's from the date you entered the country.
Yeah.
So
Maybe that's
you can
different.
renew it, but
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Japan, you would still get in like big trouble for driving.
Because they'll look at your passport and see like when you entered the country.
So even though my like international driver's permit, I think, wasn't set to start until like September, it technically started July 31st.
Which is really annoying because our like driver's license conversion experience started in April, and our first appointment was last week because it took months to get that first appointment.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's not that I didn't take it seriously when people said that it was going to take a while. It's just I didn't really think about it. I guess a lot of people don't think about it. Yeah, so basically they only process like 2 foreigners a day. And so you can imagine there can be a pretty big backlog. And what happens is most ALTs or JET participants come over here in late July or August. And then you're here and you're on your international driver's permit. And then a lot of people figure out like, oh, wait, it's about to expire. So then they try and go to convert their license.
So it gets really busy in the summer.
Yeah.
But we called in April and they were like, yeah, the next appointment is the end of July. So
yeah.
Oh, well. But
so we had our appointment, which was basically an interview.
Yeah. It's also, I don't know if this is the same for every prefecture, but it's the only driver center in Ishikawa. So one perk is that we are like literally a 10-minute drive from the single one in the prefecture.
Yeah, we're really close.
The driving like license center is basically like the DMV in America, but they have attached to it a separate building that's the driver's training center, and they're 2 entities, but they're like at the same place.
They're basically connected.
Yeah.
I've read a lot of people, they work at both places. So one appears private, but it's kind of...
That'd be so annoying if you lived like way out on the Noto Peninsula and you wanted to take driving lessons. I thought about that
because our CIR in our town told us about, he heard a story about this girl that lived in Noto, and apparently she failed the test. It was like 6 or 8 times or something.
And every time you fail, she would have had to take the bus all the way out here.
I mean, the train and then the bus.
The train doesn't go all the way up to Noto.
Yeah, well, I guess she would have had to take a bus, then a train, then another train, and then another bus.
Yeah, super
And every
annoying.
single time she was having to take time off work to come do it. Yeah.
So in the JET Wikipedia or whatever that kind of, there's a whole online resource group of things on the internet for jets, and they're sorry, that's not very eloquent, but there's one chapter that's all about just driver's license conversions, and it's been really helpful. But they are correct that your first appointment is just an interview. I was under the impression that we had a Japanese friend call and got us the appointments, and we both, her and I, thought, oh great, that'll be my driving test. I'll just study a lot and be prepared to take it. And then she called back to confirm, and they're like, yeah, this is just an interview. And
yeah, because I was reading about it, and I told you. I was like, I think this is just an interview. And you were
you were right. So, yeah, but we haven't had the test is going to be, mine is August 25th, and yours isn't until September. Yeah. So we have a while, but we're going to take a couple of hours, maybe like 3 to 5 hours of driving training each, which...
Yeah, because at the center that's connected to the DMV, you can take classes, and basically you drive on the exact same course, and the instructors basically tell you how to pass the test. So it's really convoluted and dumb, and you'll hear all about this, and it's not just like us as foreigners complaining about it, like a lot of Japanese people complain about it. But it's not realistic. It's kind of like you learn. A lot of people explain it as it's like a ritual. So it's a driving ritual.
They want to know if you can drive beautifully.
Yeah, so you have to learn this kind of elaborate dance about how to drive, and then you go and you perform it.
100% memorized on a closed course.
Yeah.
So none of that is what happens in the real world.
Yeah. And they're very strict about certain like procedural things. And I've read like funny stories about, you're supposed to like verbalize things. So when you check over your left shoulder, you're supposed to be like left shoulder. And then when you look at like the middle like mirror, you're supposed to be like middle mirror. And then you like look over your right shoulder. I've read that people on their test, they do that. And then they're very like vocal. And then I've heard sometimes there will be a story afterwards where the driving instructor will be like, okay, but don't do that in real life. And it was like, okay, well, why?
Yeah, why would you
Why
have
are
me
you
do it
testing
now?
me?
I
Anyway.
guess they just want you to be confident and very sure. I don't know. So we have some lessons scheduled, but
Yeah.
at that very first appointment, we had a friend who is also the CIR, the cultural, what does that stand for?
It's like cultural interrelations or something, international relations.
He is here on the JET program, but he has a different position than Zeb, where he's not an assistant language teacher.
We explained it in our first or second episode, if you're curious.
Well, now we're like 60 episodes in, so if you need a refresher, he works at the town hall because he's got a big boy job and he's fluent in Japanese. So if you're a JET and you're listening to this, I didn't know that actually in the CIR job description, they can go with you to like assist you as a translator.
That's
for
what
free.
he says is like an Uchinata CIR. I don't know if that's the entire,
It may not.
like every single person in that role is supposed to help.
That's
because
true.
sometimes it sounds like they don't, but I don't know.
That's true, but it might be worth asking because it was
you should
really
definitely ask.
helpful to have a translator there, and also
Well, yeah, because they're not going to speak English. At least at ours, they weren't going to use English for the interview portion.
Mm-hmm.
So
an interview, it's not like they were judging our language ability, but it was it would have been difficult to explain what all of our documents meant.
Yeah, they ask
with
you
our
some
language
very
skills.
specific questions about like what kind of tests did you do and when was it.
And since the appointment is like only on weekdays at 1:00, it's kind of hard to ask a friend to come during like work hours.
Yeah.
But anyway, he came, and there's on that resource sheet that I mentioned, there's like a whole list of like what to bring, and also on the Prefectural Driver's Center website itself, they have like the list of what to bring.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the things surprised me. Like some were obvious, like bring your residence card, bring your passport, bring your driver's license, any past driver's license if you have them, and also your proof of residence, which is different than your residence card.
Yeah, some of it's redundant, kind of funny. Like your residence
go
card.
to the town hall.
Yeah, your residence card gets stamped with the address you live at, but then you also have to go to the town hall and get your certificate that shows that you live at that address.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like a redundant thing. It's like, well, it says it on my residence card. So, but anyway,
the one that surprised me was when we got there, I did expect them to ask me questions about my passport, like when I got to Japan and things, but they asked about every single stamp in my passport. And it was kind of a bad look because some of them, we went to Europe and we crossed in and out of the like Schengen zone a couple times when we went to like Croatia, and then we got on a bus and like drove through like
Bosnia-Herzegovina.
And we had to get out and get stamped and then get back in. And I kind of forgot about that whole part, and they were like, what stamp is this? And I was like, Croatia. And they were like, okay, then what stamp is this? And I was like, actually maybe that one's Croatia. And it was like not a good look.
Well, it has the country name on the stamp.
It has it, but it's in the language of the country you were in. So it didn't say Croatia or Bosnia. It said like...
It said HR.
Oh, I don't know.
For
It said
Herzegovina.
it said a city that I didn't recognize.
Oh, there was the city name, and then in the top left, there was a stamp that had the country on it.
Well, I was floundering.
Oh.
It ended up being fine, but yeah, we were like... And I just thought they were going to care about like when you entered Japan and... you know, if you were here legally or whatever.
No, because I think they're curious about you're supposed to be licensed in the country that you have your license from for at least 3 months before you exit the country. So they were trying to see if we had been in the United States for 3 months since we had our license. But
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like a bit of a process, but we're in the process now, and we have some things scheduled.
Yeah.
So now we just have to hope we pass. Because then another thing people talk about is like kind of a like scam. Like,
well,
you pay it costs a good amount of money to take the tests, and then they're kind of incentivized to fail you because you pay again. So then if you pay to take lessons at the center attached to the DMV, apparently they're somewhat incentivized to pass you. Because since they're connected, they don't want to make themselves look bad if you've spent money.
Like they were bad teachers or something.
So it's a little convoluted, but...
The lessons do help you. Like, for example, there's a 12-step process before you start the car.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do that, then you fail. And, like, that was not a thing in America. Like, you have to check around the car, under the car, like, all the mirrors.
Well, I remember, like, in America, you know, you get in and they would ask you, like, okay, can you turn on, like, your right turn signal?
Mm-hmm.
Can you turn on your, like, hazard lights?
But it wasn't
But they would, like,
like
tell you what to do, and you were like, yeah, I can do that. It wasn't like, let me check underneath my car for small animals and check, But,
well, so we'll see if we pass or fail soon. But if you're from certain states in the U.S., which I don't know right now, but some states don't have to go through this process.
One of them's like Maryland.
Well, some are lucky, and then some countries are lucky too. So you might be listening and you might not have to go through all that.
Yeah,
so.
Some countries you just have to show up, do the interview, and then they just transfer.
And if you're listening and you have your license and you have tips, please tell me.
Oh.
So what else is on your news for this week?
Not much. There's a funny thing going on at the school I can tell you about.
We have this whole outline right here.
I know. I was just going to let you know.
I don't know.
Well, I was thinking, so today I was just having like a funny moment at school that I was thinking about, like talking about or telling you about. So they're redoing all the bathrooms at the school because I guess a lot of them are still Japanese style, like squat toilets.
Mm-hmm.
And so apparently they're modernizing the bathrooms for some reason.
I guess that's nice.
And it's really funny. So there are a bunch of construction workers just showed up at the school and started doing stuff. But they build like an extra entryway to the bathroom. It's really funny. They like put on an extra thing. I don't know if it's like to contain dust or contain something from the construction. But now there's like a double door to the bathroom. So you go into like the construction site and then you can go into the bath. It's strange. But it's just funny. There are a bunch of construction workers at school. And today I was supposed to leave a little bit early because one of the teachers told me, they were like, today, do you know about the blackout? And I was like, the what? And he was like, yeah, they're cutting the power off at school. So there's not going to be any air conditioning. And so like around 4, they didn't do it until 4:10. So that's why I didn't get home early.
I was wondering. That's like 10 minutes earlier than normal.
It's like 5, yeah. So, but it was just like a funny like thing happening at the school. And then one of the teachers was like, oh yeah, but they'll be doing this until November.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, what?
That's a really long time to be like putting some toilets in.
I know. I thought that they were going to do it during like summer break so that when the students came back, there were like fresh toilets.
Yeah.
And the teacher was like, no, it's going to be like they'll be doing construction until November.
Wow. Maybe they have to like redo all the plumbing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it is like a pretty big deal because the squat toilets are like built into the ground, you know? So I guess they have to like take it all up and then...
Yeah, squat toilets are interesting. I don't really have a problem with them, except I don't like squat toilet porta potties.
Yeah, those are scary.
Yeah.
But it was just a fun day at school because I was kind of having like a mundane day. But there were just some like funny things going on that were very like quirky slice of life. Like when I was outside, so at one point I decided to treat myself. So I went down to the vending machines. And it was funny, when I was at the vending machines, another teacher just came like walking out of a different hallway. And he's the teacher. I've seen him just like reading newspapers in the library before. And one time I saw him sleeping. He like had his head on his hand and he was reading, but he definitely just like fell asleep.
Oh, poor
and so
guy.
I know that he has some time to kill. And so we were both just getting coffees. And he was like, it's hot, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, it's like hot. So he was getting a cold coffee. And that's what I was doing. So we chatted for a little bit, and it was just kind of funny. He also told me about the blackout. He was like, yeah, the power, it's going away. I was like, dang.
What an exhilarating day at work.
I know. But so I got my coffee, and then I was like, it'd be nice to kind of sit outside for a little bit, because there's a little breezeway, and we get the wind from the ocean, So and it's in the shade. So I was sitting out there, and then one of the janitors happened to walk by. I don't know what she was doing out there, just cruising around. I think that they have like little maintenance-y areas that they go in and out of.
Like a restroom.
I know, sometimes it feels like Hogwarts. They'll just like open a door and they'll just like pop out in the hallway. Like,
where did you come from?
Yeah, like, where have you been? Like, they've been in a closet or something hanging out. Like, what's going on? But she like came around the corner and she was just like, Sensei, where are your shoes? Because I'd taken my shoes off since I was outside. Yeah. I didn't want to wear my shoes.
Can't put your indoor shoes outside.
Yeah, and it was like a good conversation because it was enough Japanese I could talk to her. And so I was explaining to her, like, oh, my shoes are over there. because they're my inside shoes and I'm outside. And she kind of thought it was really funny, and she like motioned like wiping your feet off, and she was like, just wipe your feet off on the mat. And I was like, oh, like daijoubu desu ka? And she was like, daijoubu desu. Like she was like, it's fine. Like she's like, just wipe your feet off and you can wear your shoes outside.
It's so interesting, because I would think, I mean, they're so strict about shoe rules.
I know. And that's what she did. And then like she just like walked up there and I heard her like wiping her feet off, and she went inside. So I was like,
I mean, that seems very realistic.
yeah. So I was sitting there drinking my coffee, and then another one of the janitor people like popped out of a different like building. I was like, where are people coming from? So yeah, it was just really funny. It was like a quirky moment. I was just sitting out there enjoying my cold brew, refreshing aftertaste coffee.
Okay.
And yeah, it was just a fun day.
Well, I'm glad it was a cozy day.
Yeah.
You want to talk about what we did this weekend?
Yeah. You want to talk about that big bird we both saw real quick?
Sure.
So
We're all over the place.
sorry. I just thought this bird really cracked me up.
Yeah, we did both. We went on 2 separate rides, and then we both got back and asked each other, like, or actually we both
Well, I was
were like,
telling
oh,
you
we
I
saw
this
a
really
bird.
big bird, and you were like, I saw a big bird too.
Yeah, I was like, is it the same one I recorded on my phone?
So
we saw a stork.
yeah, we saw an oriental stork, which it was so big, so that there was a guy driving, and he stopped. We actually almost hit each other because he was like coming out of like a little side road and coming onto the road that I was on, and we both saw the bird, and we both were like, whoa. So we like took our eyes off the road, and when we looked up, we were like kind of heading for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah,
It was
I mean,
huge.
it's smaller
It was
than
like a dinosaur.
Yeah, it's smaller than an ostrich, but like compared to the herons and stuff
But
that we see
like
and the
ostriches
cranes.
don't fly, and the
Yeah,
stork
true.
flies.
That's
Like,
true.
it's-
Yeah, how does it get
It's
up
this
there?
massive thing that flies.
Yeah.
It was so big, it really caught me off guard. I was like, what am I looking at? But
So I was looking at pictures of storks, and it was not a shoebill stork, but I saw pictures of shoebill storks, and
Those things are
they
creepy.
really look like humans in bird
yeah,
costumes.
their eyes are very,
Their eyes are very like human.
I don't like them.
They like look right into your
Yeah.
soul.
But the stork we saw is an oriental stork, which is, of course, in the Orient. And I forget the word for it, but it was extinct in Japan, but it was reintroduced, and now it's doing pretty well. And
Pretty
apparently
cool.
they're nesting here in Ishikawa. So they're like known for being in Ishikawa. So it's kind of like cool if you see one, because they're, I guess, rare since
Yeah.
they've been reintroduced, and they've recently been nesting here in the prefecture.
Very
And they don't
cool.
let you go see the nest because, of course, they don't want you to like disturb them. But apparently they're massive. I guess you can tell by
Yeah, I
how
bet
big
the
the bird is. But,
Eggs are huge.
yeah.
Do you think that humans can eat like any bird eggs?
Yeah.
That would be kind of ridiculous.
We eat all kinds of fish eggs and all kinds of eggs.
Yeah, that's
We
true.
can definitely
Not that I'm
crack
advocating
open a big stork egg.
eating like a endangered bird egg, but
Imagine eating an ostrich egg.
oh yeah, people do that, don't they?
I think. I don't know.
Well, maybe. Email us if you've eaten an ostrich egg.
We don't know what's going on. But yeah, it was very impressive. Very
Yeah.
big bird. But that kind of kicked off our weekend. We saw this
Did
big
it?
bird, and then
That was the highlight of the.
that was the highlight of my last week up until the weekend.
Wow.
Monday through Friday was
That
pretty dull until I saw that big bird, and then
Dang.
turned my week around.
Well, good. I'm glad. So yeah, that was on Friday, and you actually took the day off on Friday because we had a big drive coming up.
Yep.
So in the morning we were riding, just to like pre-ride, and that was my first ride of the week because I was actually getting over a cold, and hopefully you can't tell that I'm stuffy on this recording, but that was the first time I was riding, and I was trying to recover in time for my first race of like a whole year, which was on Saturday, and it was in Nagano Prefecture, which is where we were driving, and it was the Shimano Bikers Festival
Yeah.
at the Fujimi Panorama Resort.
Yeah, so we were driving over. It was like 4.5 hours. We were staying in Nagano, and we were staying at Shirakawa Lake,
Yeah, Shirokabako.
Shirokabako, which is really pretty lake. It's at about like 4,600 feet elevation.
Yeah.
So it's kind of up
We
there.
didn't choose that area. I signed up for the race.
Us.
No, I signed up for the race, the 31st annual, and there were a ton of people going because there were no hotels booked, and this was months in advance. And I know we've talked about people liking to book things in advance, but I was like, man, so we actually stayed like 45 minutes away at the lake, and it ended up being really nice, and it was a very affordable guest house, and it was really like cool temperatures because the lake was so high. So when I woke up that morning, it was actually really refreshing.
Yeah,
like
the
waking
elevation
up in a tree house
really made a big difference. So it's just a cool area. I guess it's known for like a winter resort town.
Yeah,
so
and there's
there are
onsen
tons
there.
of places to rent because there's a lot of skiing. I think there are 3 different slopes, or like 3 different resorts with slopes that you can go to. So
yeah, it's at the base of Mount Tadashina, and there's like a ton of different ski areas, like you said. But there's also at the lake, there's a bike walking path like all the way around it, which is kind of nice and family friendly. And on the lake, they have these swan boats that I wanted to ride in, like
around.
the ones that look like you're in a swan.
Yeah.
And they had a teddy bear museum, which is questionable, but the website says that it's a healing spot where you can meet over 11,000 bears. I don't know if that's healing.
I read some of the Google reviews for it, and some of them were a little, they had some haters. There were some people that were like, not worth it. Apparently it's kind of expensive.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what makes it a museum, or if it's just like a lot of teddy bears.
A lot of teddy bears. And someone did point out they have a Guinness World Book record for smallest teddy bear in the world there. But then someone was making fun of it because they were like, you can literally just take a cotton swab, like Q-tip, and like put some eyes on it and call it a teddy bear. They're like, what do you mean? Like,
it's not a teddy bear.
No, apparently it was. Apparently like it's like a knitted bear.
Interesting.
It's like super small. I don't know. But yeah.
Well, and if that's not enough, they have a family fun park area, which actually did have some fun looking rides. They were like my speed rides, were probably they were for like 12 and under, but little carnival stuff. And then I guess the main reason why people go is there are a lot of like baths and onsen, and there's a ton of little guest houses everywhere over there, and
kind of like a lot of Airbnbs.
Yeah, we stayed in one of those, but there is like a massive resort, and at the resort there's a bunch of different baths. And I didn't know this, but one of the baths is on the roof, and it's a mixed bath, so like the whole family can go up there because it's like typically at a bath you go in naked, but this one you put your bathing suit on, so it's kind of like a pool, but instead of like play splash vibes, it's like relax vibes.
Yeah, it was one of those interesting areas that probably was like pretty booming like in the 80s, probably a huge deal, and probably in the winter it looks different, but you could definitely tell like some of the hotels and stuff looked a little kind of like worn down, like but maybe it's kind of like bouncing back because the resort had
was
a
like
brand new area. But some of the reviews said that if you book a room in the old part of the resort, it's kind of like ugh.
Well, so that was Shirakawa Lake.
Yeah.
But Nagano itself is some facts about it. It has 15 out of the 23 3,000 meter high mountains in Japan. So I don't know who calls it this, but it says it has the nickname the Roof of Japan. And 5 national parks of Japan's are in Nagano, and 80% of it is covered in forest. It also has the longest, I don't know if this is related, but has the longest life expectancy of any prefecture nationwide. So
that's pretty impressive.
87 is for women, 87 years for women, and about 81 years for men. And then last fact is that Nagano borders, I don't know if it's the biggest prefecture, well no, because Hokkaido is its own prefecture.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty big prefecture, like on the main island.
Yeah.
And it borders 8 other prefectures. So
yeah, it's a really cool area. Like if you're into nature and stuff like that, highly recommend going to Nagano. But why we were there is for Annie's race, which was actually in Fujimi. There's a little town, and it's like at a
resort.
Yeah, the Fujimi Panoramic Resort. Because I think sometimes from Fujimi, you can see Fuji.
Yeah, you should. And the resort was a mountain bike park / like I guess ski area in the winter.
Yeah, wintertime ski park. And
we didn't go up to the top because we weren't doing downhill, but they said that if you took the gondolas up, you can see Fuji. Which
it was a bit of a hazy day though.
Yeah.
Because I was on an adjacent mountain, so I did a ride to Fujimi that day, and I went up Tadashina, and at least in the morning it was like really hazy. Like there really wasn't a view from the top. Well,
the Bikers Festival is hosted by Shimano, who, if you're a fellow cyclists, then you'll know that Shimano and SRAM are kind of the two main bike component manufacturers.
Campanolo.
And what?
Campanolo.
Okay, but I wouldn't really put them as, like, the same size.
Oh, I would.
You think so?
Yeah.
They're, like, famous and have a big name in Europe, but I don't know.
Annie's a peasant.
Well, they don't make mountain bike stuff, do they? I don't think so. Anyway, SRAM and Shimano make all components for all bikes, like all kinds of bikes. And they also had all kinds of rides and races offered, which was cool. So it was a mountain bike resort, but I don't have a mountain bike, and so I was riding my gravel bike on the GX course, which was actually the same course as the cross-country race, but it was being billed as kind of like a gravel short track kind of race. And they also had e-bikes there.
No, they just called it a gravel race, but it wasn't really
I had a great time.
No, it was like cool.
Yeah.
But if you showed up to it thinking like gravel race and you're from America,
oh yeah,
and you showed up and you were like, oh, I signed up for the gravel race, and then you went to it, you'd be like, what?
Yeah, well, I knew going into it was going to be like a short circuit, like how many laps can you complete in an hour?
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a short track race. But they had that. They had downhill races and regular mountain bike cross-country races. They had like team races. Actually the duo category had the most riders in it of any category. It had like 50 people. But there were so many races that kind of every category was a little small. Yeah, I think you kind of watered it down
a little bit.
Yeah, but they, in addition to all of the racing, they also had just rides. Like you could rent and try out e-bikes. You could go off the mountain and join a road ride with the Shimano race team, which was kind of a cool idea. They had actual gravel rides off mountain that weren't just like a little course.
Basically like just group rides that you could sign up to do.
They also had an interesting thing because Shimano makes fishing equipment also, which is kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of random, but I guess both are sports that you need small parts for. But they make bike components and fishing components, and so they had these like ride and fish tours going on where you would like ride out somewhere and fish together and then ride back, which is like a cool idea.
Yeah, I think it's pretty neat.
And clinics too. But I had only one other competitor in my category, technically.
Annie crushed her.
She was
Destroyed
12.
her.
She was
very
super
young.
friendly, and I was looking at the results later, and she had raced earlier that day.
I saw that.
Yeah, and so yeah, I was very impressed by her. But luckily for the two of us, they like started us with all the men. I don't know, lucky or unlucky, but we at least had other competitors on the course.
I think it makes it more exciting.
It was more exciting, and especially because our race, there was such a variety of skills and interests and goals.
Yeah, because there were no categories really. It was like pretty open, like anyone could just sign up to it. So you had some people that signed up that like in the hour they completed like 4 laps. And for reference, Annie did 15 and the winners of the race did 18. So there were some people that were just kind of
just like 1 lap every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is fine. But yeah, it was kind of cool to be in a race where there were people that were just out there just to be there. Yeah. And then there were some people that, like, you had a teammate there who was like, he races bikes not for a living, but like it's his number one hobby. Like he like lives to race bikes. And so it was cool to have that difference. And there was also another American in the race. And
boy, John.
Yeah, and John might be listening to this because we met him kind of through this podcast. So that was cool to see him in real life and share a little bike weekend with him. Yeah. And he, shout out to him, was very close to the podium, like seconds off of first place.
Yeah, he got 4th. He finished 4th, which it gets a little confusing because they weren't pulling anyone, so it like everyone gets shuffled around, and then it was really hard to tell like what place you were in or where you were. You kind of had to keep track of it. I don't know. It seemed a little chaotic. Yeah. You couldn't really tell like what was like when was the
last lap or not.
Yeah, and then the last lap they didn't do like a bell lap. They just immediately pulled people. Where normally in an hour-long event, you'd hit an hour, and then they would ring the bell, and then everyone would know, okay, we got 1 more lap, so we got to like sprint it out, like that's it. And in this, they hit an hour, and they just like immediately were like, all right, you're done.
Yeah, they were like pulling you off the course like at an hour.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm sure he was a little like frustrated that it was so close, but he did a really good job. And
but Annie won, which meant that she participated in this elaborate ceremony.
Yeah, I got 15th out of, like, everybody, if you count all 45 people. But yeah, me and the one other girl, I beat her. But it was really fun because they had this whole elaborate podium thing for the two of us, and they gave us, like, glasses, and we stood on a box, and they interviewed us even.
Yeah, and you got a winner's jersey.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately says 31st
Yeah.
festival.
There's a bit of a typo. It's a little
Japan's
funny,
pretty
though.
bad with, they don't really get the TH and ST. Like,
I understand the mistake,
and the
but
RD, they don't, like, I get it too. They just think that TH is kind of like for every number.
well,
And
I
so
don't know.
often you'll see, like,
I don't know if it's often, but
23rd.
it happened also in the Sapporo.
31st.
It happened in the Sapporo festival.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's often, but like,
That's two pretty big high-profile events where they printed it.
Printed on the Coke cans, like Coca-Cola out of the vending machine.
Yeah, so I bought one.
So, and I know that Coca-Cola has English-speaking people working
Just
for
like
them.
Shimano.
Yeah.
They're a global company.
I guess that's why we're giving them a hard time, because I know they have English people.
Yeah.
That I guess it just slipped through the cracks. But it was a cool... I was so thrilled to be back on single track, because that's like the number one thing I've missed. Okay, besides like obviously family and friends.
Cats.
Yeah. But the number one just like thing...
Pizza. Cheese.
Yeah. But I've really missed biking on trails. And so...
Yeah, so Annie grew up as like a mountain biker, so she was lamenting the lack of mountain biking in Japan.
There's not a lot of mountain biking in Ishikawa, but
No.
Nagano there's much more, and so it was really fun to race.
It's just really funny though to see like casually people, we're friends with on Strava, go for, a 50-mile mountain bike ride, and it's all on single track, and there probably aren't 50 miles of single track in Nagano.
Yeah, it's just a different mountain bike culture here. So we have it really good with mountain biking in America. But
yeah, for sure.
It was cool to see like how many girls there were. I'm always very excited when I see like kids mountain biking, because I remember being a kid mountain biking and there's not a whole lot of you. And so to see the kids races outnumber the adult races is really cool. Like, for example, there were only 2 of us in this one category, but in the women's XC races, like the mountain bike races, there were more, but the biggest event was actually the girls cross-country mountain bike race, like children, girls. There was still only like 9 people, but that was the biggest one, was the kids race.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it was a good day.
Got up really early on Saturday, which was very nice of you, because Zeb left our guest house really early so that he could finish at the race and see me race.
Yeah, I just planned a route so I could leave Shirokabako. And I just planned a route so I could leave there and then ride to Fujimi to watch the race and like see a bunch of new roads. And it was really nice. It's like a really beautiful area, and the climbing's really good. And also, just that one, I was up really early, but because of the elevation, the temperature is so much lower there.
Yeah.
So it was nice to kind of escape the heat of being by the coast. And it did make me miss like being in the mountains. It was so nice being at like a high altitude, and you have like the crisp mountain air, and
I mean, we will get
different.
that here, just like in the fall and the spring. So yeah, having it like in August was nice.
Like in the summer, and just the mountains are really pretty, and I like being in the mountains. So yeah, I planned like a really nice ride that went up Mount Tadashina, which Tadashina apparently means high water peppers. So that was fun. And then the craziest thing was Mizugaki, which is a mountain, and maybe we can post a picture on the Instagram. I did this crazy river valley descent, and it really did feel a bit like Spirited Away, because I went through like some kind of back road mountain stuff, and then I popped out in a little town, and I was kind of in a more populated area. And then all of a sudden, out of that populated area, I was just in the middle of nowhere again. And then I went down this crazy river descent, which was the Hontoni River Valley off of Mizugaki-yama. And yeah, it was just wild back there. It was really crazy.
The photos were pretty.
Yeah, it's really unique.
You met a very nice old lady at a 7-Eleven.
I did meet a nice old lady at 7-Eleven. It was just a good day.
Told you to take care of yourself.
And then I made it to Fujimi in time to watch Annie race, which is the important part. Yeah. So our Saturday, it was really fun.
Yeah.
And then Sunday.
Yeah, so Sunday I woke up and I was pretty tired because I had that cold, and I was kind of ignoring my body's like request to rest because I was like, no, I'm going to race. And so on Sunday I was like, all right, we did it. Like, maybe we'll just do like a nice ride, see some pretty stuff. And I'm still kind of stuffy, you know, like, but I want to see things. And Zeb was like, oh, I have a ride planned. It won't be, you said it won't be as much climbing as yesterday.
And it wasn't.
Yeah, so I just shouldn't let you like quantify rides by your quantifiers, because yeah, it wasn't as much ride as the day before, as much climbing as the day before, but the day before was like 12,000 feet of climbing, so like of course it wasn't that much.
Well, I was honest.
Yeah, so instead we did 70 miles and 10,000 feet of climbing, which is like over 3,000 meters.
So in my defense, it actually was supposed to be quite a bit easier, but unfortunately there was a road closed.
Yeah, and the road is closed until 2027, which is ridiculous. They should just take that off the map. But we got to the road and there was like a huge barricade and signs.
I mean, now like I know a little bit more about, I guess, we've had this happen to us before and it's never been too big of an issue. I mean, thankfully, we did have to tack on like 10 miles to the ride total to make it back.
And a lot of climbing.
But basically now, like from planning routes, I know what to look for. And then I know like if I'm in doubt, I should use Google Maps to view the area.
There are a lot more landslides in Japan.
Yeah, and usually it doesn't really bother me because usually the reroute isn't like that significant. But it happened to be on Sunday. It was like not massive. It was
significant elevation change.
Yeah.
So, but it was very beautiful. So we rode on a road called the Venus Line, and even in Japanese, it's like the
Venusu Line.
Yeah, it's like Venus in katakana.
Yeah, and it has a lot of similarities to the Blue Ridge Parkway. If you're from America, or you know what the Blue Ridge Parkway is, it's kind of like Japan's version of that. It's not nearly as long.
Yeah, everybody on it was just like joyriding. Like there's not really anything on it that you need to get to in a hurry, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, you wouldn't use it to like commute, I don't think, or really.
There were a ton of motorcycles, which that'd be a great place to ride your motorcycle.
It would be. It was beautiful because it's like kind of this high altitude like relatively. So maybe like between 4,500 feet and like 6,000 feet elevation. You're kind of like
it's high for
lumpy
Japan.
going up and down.
Because Japan doesn't have a lot of like tall mountains. Like if you compare to like Western America, like the Rockies and stuff.
Yeah, you're not going to get like altitude sickness.
No.
But
relatively, it's much higher than the surrounding area.
But it was really nice, and one of the like key components of the ride is I wanted to see the Venus Line, so I wanted to spend some time on that, checking it out. And then the next part was there's this place called the Utsukushi-gahara Highlands.
Which sounds like, I mean, it is a long name, but Utsukushi means beautiful.
Yeah. And
Gahara is like field.
Yeah, so like the beautiful fields. But it's this highland area that's like really beautiful. I don't really know like what it's reminiscent of, but basically think high altitude grasslands. Yeah, so it just looked really beautiful, and I saw it on a map, and I kind of saw that there's a road that cuts through it that's gravel, and I did some research and I had read different reports of people riding through it, but one of those was from like 2010. It was like this old like forum post that was like someone's ride report, and they talked about riding through it. And then another one was a little bit more recent, and it is on the heat map, so people do ride their bikes through it. But yeah, so that was kind of like the key point, is I really wanted to go see that and then just see some scenery off
and
the
on
Venus
that gravel
line.
road, there's cows, like cow fields on both sides.
Yeah.
And there were so many cows.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen a single cow. Okay, actually there are cows in Uchinada, but there's like 10 cows. Yeah. I'm sure there's more, but there's not a lot. And they're like, wow, look at all our cows. This whole one herd of cows. Yeah. And this was like legitimately a lot of cows.
It was a lot of cows.
And they were really different looking cows too. I don't know how to describe that, but they were just very pretty, and it was such a picturesque area. Yeah,
because you're at like 6,500 feet, and you're just in this like grassland, and you can see off the mountain too. So it's kind of this nice little rolling terrain, and then you can see huge drop off where it drops. And we got there
we were biked up the Venus Line, and then I guess you peel off of it a bit, and you get to this this building that's at the end of a parking lot that is, I think there was a hotel as well as being a restaurant,
Yeah, because
gift
I think
shop,
there's
everything.
a ryokan up there. So there are actually, I think there are a few ryokans up there that you can get to.
So there was that one, and at that point you park your car because it's very clearly pedestrian only, but there was a gray area about bikes. Like, it was very obviously no vehicles.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I wouldn't ride a bike there again.
I'm glad that we did it, and I think it was a neat experience. But yeah, for sure, I wouldn't
like
go back and
we
do
got
it
some
again.
glares. It was more like,
I think more just like people being like shocked.
yeah, I
like,
guess
how
so.
did you
No
get
one
a bike
was
up here?
Yeah, no one was
Kinda look.
angry or anything, and we did ride by like a guy who was taking care of the cows, who was like an employee, and he
we
didn't
purposefully, like, we made sure we went super slow.
Yeah, we were like
weren't-
crawling.
Yeah.
So we didn't kick up any gravel or spook anyone, and none of the cows were like bothered.
Yeah.
And the guy who was taking care of the cow didn't say anything to us. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was kind of like, I don't know if this is okay.
Definitely
There was
a bit
lot,
of a gray area.
It was a lot more people walking than I
honestly
expected.
Probably, yeah, I think because it was such a beautiful day.
Yeah.
So I think and it was a weekend. So maybe if you went like early on a weekday, and yeah, it wouldn't be a big deal. But it was like a beautiful day, so there were quite a few people hiking.
But halfway, you get to another hotel, restaurant, gift shop area that I guess some people will park and walk there and spend the night, and that's kind of like their thing. And
Or
then,
you can take a bus.
Yeah, so that's the weird part, is like there's no vehicles, but sometimes there's buses. I guess just
I
because.
think they just drive people up from one side, from the Matsumoto side, and they drive people up and drop them off there, because that's like the steepest side.
I guess that makes sense. But yeah, and then you continue down and you get back to the road, and there's another just restaurant. I don't think that was a hotel.
Yeah. But it's like a really fascinating area, and it was super pretty, and the Venus line was super pretty, and overall, like, I'm really glad we
I
went
am
up
too.
there. It was like a really beautiful area to ride through. Super nice.
Yeah, we're coming down from that hill was when we found out that the road was closed. So
yeah, because my plan was we would descend off that and then we would take a separate side road. And that was actually the only part that I was significantly bummed about, was actually just descending down into Matsumoto. Because on paper or on the maps, it looks like such a cool climb because it's like, it's significant. It's like a long climb.
It was like a 10-mile descent.
Yeah, so if you had gone the other way, it'd be like this like super hard, like really fun climb. I think it'd be a really good time. But then the road surface on the way down was terrible.
Yeah.
It was so bad. So I probably, because I was kind of, I like to
You had
daydream.
to go pretty slow because you would like slam you couldn't avoid the potholes.
Yeah, and I like to daydream, so I was thinking like, if we move somewhere cool, like what if we lived in Matsumoto one day? I was like, man, it'd be so cool. You'd have this like massive climb right there that would be like so much fun for training, and it'd just be good to do. And then when we did the descent, I was like, even if I lived here, I would maybe do this climb like once a year, just because the descent is so terrible.
I didn't hate it as much as you, but I was kind of annoyed. We stopped.
You couldn't really go fast because the road surface was so poor. Going fast would be pretty irresponsible and a little bit dangerous, because the road surface, like, there were enough huge potholes and bumps and stuff that it was kind of like, okay, like.
And because you had to be on the brakes so much, like, to avoid stuff, I actually had to stop halfway to like shake my hands out because they were, and my brakes were like smelling, like where they're rubbing too much, which rarely happens on a bike,
Yeah, but it was cool, and we descended down to Matsumoto. But the best part, maybe the entire ride, free roadside pickles.
Oh,
remember
that was way at the beginning of the ride when we were still like feeling.
Yeah, we
really
were still on like
fresh.
the Venus line, and it was really funny. We stopped at a place to get some water, and we bought a drink, and we were hanging out. And then for whatever, I guess he was having a slow day. He wasn't even old. He's like middle aged. The guy that was like running the place just started talking to us. He was like chatting, and then at one point he was like, "You like Japanese food? Like, you like shoyu?" And we were like, yeah. And he like just started handing us like little plates.
Yeah.
Like, he gave us like a little sampler plate of
like a plate of all kinds of pickles, and apparently there's mushrooms that are famous there, and that he was selling.
Mushrooms, and they were actually pretty good.
Yeah, Zeb doesn't even like mushrooms.
Yeah, but those were tasty. We got dried fruit. He gave us a bunch of like dried plum
candy.
candy.
And then when we were leaving, he was like, okay, well, like, be careful out there today, and if you like start feeling weak, like, eat these candies. And he put a bunch of candies in our pockets.
Yeah, it was wild.
They were like
nice guy.
dried plum, so they were kind of sour.
Yeah, it was a nice day. So we descended on to Matsumoto, and then we had to climb back up to the Venus line. So we got to ride
Yeah.
it twice, which we didn't really intend to do, and that added a lot of elevation to
That
the
was
day.
like, I was getting a little heat exhaustion then. I did have to stop at one point.
Yeah, Annie was starting to have a little tough time towards the end.
But I made it.
We made it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was overall just nice
It
weekend.
was really beautiful.
Yeah. I would definitely go back to Nagano. And we are going back for a bike trip,
Yeah.
but not the same roads.
Yeah, I
gonna
would
see
go
some new
back
stuff.
again. I would do better at hydrating and like being prepared for like the elevation so I don't get the heat exhaustion feeling. Because yeah, being like hot and
Yeah.
nauseous is like not where you want to be on a bike ride.
Yeah, but super beautiful area.
It was.
And also, I was actually thinking about this. Our boy Tyler did was coming over for their honeymoon.
Yeah.
And they like hiking.
Yeah.
The Highland area would be a beautiful place to hike because I
That's
think that there
true.
are hiking trails that connect kind of like all across that area between Shirakawa Lake and the Utsugushi like Highlands.
Yeah, once you get up to those highlands, like we only rode the main portion just to get to the other side.
But there were so many hiking trails up
Yeah,
there.
you could have like taken any fork off
That would be like a really beautiful, and there were like tons of camping grounds up in that area. So if you were like into hiking, it'd be a beautiful place to do it.
It's
But,
true.
Yeah. Well,
You have a word of the week?
I do. And to stay on theme, my word of the week is sangaku, which basically is like plural for mountains. And they also kind of use it in terms of like mountainous and like mountaineering. It's kind of like, so yama and san. So yama means mountain, and then san is like the honorific added on to mountains. Like, so Fuji-san
But it's
is
the
Mount
same
Fuji.
kanji.
Same kanji, two different readings. But you wouldn't say that like a series of mountains, like yama, it seems like sangaku is kind of like plural. Like it's
that's
a
so
mountainous
interesting because-
region, or it's mountains, a mountain area. So for example, sangaku can refer to a mountain region or chain of mountains. So if the king of the mountains in the tour is the Sangaku Show, which is the mountain prize, like literally translated.
That is interesting
So
because
yeah,
I guess like
Sangaku.
plural and singular isn't really a very important concept in Japanese. Like there's not a lot
Yeah,
of...
it's like thing and thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not really that Sangaku is the plural form of yama. It's just a yama is what it is. It's like a mountain. And then Sangaku is like the region.
Like a range of them.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Well, mine's not related, but
Oof.
mine's Aisukrimu Zutsu. Have you heard that one?
I don't think so. I know what an aisukrimu is.
Yeah, so Aisukrimu is ice cream in katakana, just literally. And Zutsu is headache. And it's basically a brain freeze. Because I was asking my friends, they were telling me to be careful biking, and because there's a heat wave right now.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, how about next time we meet, we should get kakigori, like shaved ice. And I was like, oh, that sounds really good. And they're like, yeah, you have to be careful when we eat it, you'll get a headache. And I was like, oh, like a brain freeze. What do you call that in Japanese? But I don't think that aisukrimu zutsu is like very well used. Because at first they were like, I don't really know. And then when I looked it up, it was like, oh, this is a medical term. Which is weird because like a brain freeze is very much not a medical term.
Yeah, it's not like a
just
medical emergency. You're not gonna like
colloquial-
call your doctor because you got, my brain froze.
Yeah. It's just like something that happens. But yeah, so zutsu is headache. And then just an ice cream headache. But yeah, I hope I get a ice cream zutsu.
Dang.
Because it's hot out.
It is hot.
I would love to eat some ice cream.
Yeah. Well,
That wraps us up then.
I think so. Maybe I'm going to go eat some ice cream.
Sounds
So we
good.
have some in our freezer.
Yeah, thanks for listening this week, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. And definitely don't forget, you can email us if you have any questions or any comments.
Ramsbothams
or
at
want to know
gmail.com.
anything. Yeah. Just let us know.
If you want to know anything.
Anything.
Don't promise that.
Like
but
aliens. We're open to any and all conversations.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.